Yeah, if you press play on me, I won't stop. My name's Johnny. Performer name is Jonny Woo. I've been doing drag and cabaret. I didn't really used to call it drag. It was like, I don't know, queer performance art, but queer wasn't a word back then when I started in New York on the downtown scene for 3 years. And then I came back to London and started doing performance events inspired by the performance clubs I've been to in New York. And then, yeah, I put up a community around me. A lot of people joined to what we're doing at the moment, which is the show Suburbia. I've been making shows with Soho Theatre. First one was in 2005. A show called A Night of a Thousand J. Astons, which I'm not sure all your listeners will know who she is, but you might know who she is from Bucks Fizz. And yeah, I've been making shows with them ever since, so it's great to be going back and doing a show with them now. So yeah, so I'm a performer, director, venue owner, drag queen, cabaret artist, writer, stuff. What is Suburbia like? This is interesting because it's like I haven't done a solo show at Soho for 10 years, so it's a real return for me. And I kind of just assume everyone knows what my shows are like. When I used to do shows starting back in 2003 to for the next 11 years, I used to do a thing called Gay Bingo, which was this kind of like improvised sort of night of bingo, but was very much a stream of consciousness. I'd be throwing ideas up, changing costumes, doing kind of little skits that I'd kind of like practiced and working with my pals who were doing it with me, or then making shows at Bistrotheque, which was this venue that I work at in East London where I'm still making stuff. And so my style was, it'd be a mixture of kind of spoken word, cabaret, lip syncing. There's invariably quite a lot of nudity goes on in my shows because I like to get naked, and shocking kind of stuff. And so I just assume everyone knows what my shows are like, but I haven't. But the whole audience has changed, so people might not be aware. So Suburbia is a part throwback to this style of show making. So it's very collage. It has the cabaret, the drag, the shock, the thrill elements, but it has a lot of kind of spoken word elements in it, a lot of memoir and storytelling, which is something that I used to do when I first started making work. So I've been kind of like working on a memoir recently. So it's very much it's part cabaret, it's part theatre, it's part club. But as a whole, I want it to be some kind of beautiful theatrical happening that gives you a bit of gives you kind of an insight into my life or a life of someone growing up in the suburbs, moving to the big city, and how chance moments in your youth and adolescence and formative years trigger patterns of behavior that echo later on in life. So that's kind of like what the show's about. But essentially, as with all my shows, I like them to be exciting. I like them to be slightly uncomfortable in places, which sometimes I regret. And I think, oh, you feel a bit uncomfortable now. No, I'm pissed off with myself. But I like shifts in tone. I like it to be a little bit poignant. I like it to be thoroughly entertaining. Definitely, I like people to go away and think, wow, that was an amazing night. One man show, but I inhabit lots of different. I'm not saying lots of different persona, but there are lots of different colours in my performance through it. So there's the lip sync, there's the burlesque, there's the song, there's the original songwriting, there's the spoken word, there's the poetry, there's the performance art. So it's a one-man show, but there's lots of different versions of me within that show. To me, and I've said this to them, to me, I think the Soho Theatre is probably one of the most important grassroots performance venues in London, if not the country. I think it's like one of the unsung heroes of the queer performance scene, and they've always been like this. They've always championed London, emerging international queer artists without fanfare. They just do it. It's just part of the DNA of the venue. There were lots of different moving parts, moving people even. There was on the night. I like to have space for a bit of improvisation because I both love and hate the danger that brings, and I love and hate the results. But The higher the risk, the greater the reward. You make work by success and mistakes. I say if you haven't died on stage, you haven't tried. Oh, how did I end up where I am? To sum that up, I think this show's a little bit about that, really. Um, Looking back on what my aspirations were as a kid, as a teenager, and wanting to go into theatre and having very pure dreams of going into musical theatre, and then just finding things along the way. Basically, for me, drink and drugs was a big distraction along a lot of the way. So it took me into nightclubs, which I loved for a long time. I had my teens. My teens were in the 80s, but my adult teens, late teens, 20s, was in the 90s. And we all know what the 90s was like if you were there. It was like a wash with drugs, fantastic dance drugs. And I don't know, it was a real moment. And I really resonated with that scene. I resonated with the kind of those communities. I loved dancing, I loved the music. And it's a continuing kind of like theme in my life. But it definitely took me down a different path and took me into a different way of performing. And like cabaret, nightclubs, queer performance sat alongside, nightclubs going out and that. For better and for worse. It's kind of like definitely had its drawbacks. I'm in recovery. I've had health scares along the way. Today, I'm healthy, well, and making work. But things might have been different if I'd have made lived different life choices. I think I've been led astray. Just in other people trying to say what I should be doing, but it's not until you turn 50 that you're like, this is it, baby. We make our own choices. Just do what you want to do. My friend said, move towards the joy. What makes you happy? What makes you happy, not necessarily what makes you the most successful or the most money. I was born in London, in Camberwell, actually, but I grew up in just outside the Medway towns. Yeah, 3 years in New York, 2000 to 2003. I was in New York, yeah. And I had a brief stay in South London. But I've mainly been in, my heart is definitely in Hackney. I'd done a year at dance school. I'd finished university doing drama. Then I worked in retail. Then I went to dance school for a year. Then I went to New York to continue doing like independent dance training. And whilst I was there, I met a wonderful drag performer called Lavinia Co-op and another performer called Brandon Olson. And we started dressing up in a kind of drag, not drag as we know it now, like with RuPaul's Drag Race, but I guess sort of club kid adjacent. You put something up, you'd go out, you'd do a look, you'd go to bars, and in New York at the time, the burlesque scene was appearing, this new burlesque, and it wasn't like a vintage style. The women were very political, it had a sort of punky edge. So you had strippers, performance artists, new burlesque dancers, and on that scene, you had a lot of basically queer performers. You had a lot of gay performers who are alternative to maybe the traditional drag scene, were making work on that scene. And that's where I started doing stuff. And basically, with my friend Brandon, we were familiar with it. We just said, oh, shall we do something together? And that became the spark of doing, the first thing I ever did, I wore a suit, he had some dress on, I did some shoddy beatbox, and he did some spoken word over the top. So I hold that dear to me, and whilst it continues to be there with me, it's not something I shout from the rooftops. I just get on with it.